So as part of my Patreon, I have allowed the Tier 5 and Tier 10 Patreons to ask me questions that I will answer every month. And there's a Patreon post and a place in the Discord for placing all these questions that anything you gotta ask, anything you want to ask, put it there and I might answer it. If it's too personal, I might just completely skip over it because, I mean, obvious reasons, but in general, it's simple as that. Just ask me questions and I will answer them at the end of every month like I am doing now. So, let's just get started. The first question is going to be a big one. Do you have any experience in other MMOs? MapleStory, Atlantica Online, Lattale, Dungeon Fighter Online, Fly for Fun, Rift. There's another one like Rift. There's one like Chinese one that I played. What else? I probably have at least like 20 different MMOs. Oh, Ultima, I think. Arcade, I think I tried a little bit. What else? I never really stuck to any MMOs for very long, except for Atlantica Online, though. For those who have never heard of that one, it was a strategy game where, like, you would have enemies on the overworld you could go fight, but interacting with an enemy would start you into a turn-based fight of the enemy would have a 3x3 square and you would have a 3x3 square. So at most, you could have 9 characters in your party at all times. And you could also have some in reserve for swapping out later or something, I think. I can't remember though. But it was actually really good. There was some strategy. I think the Cannoneers were in general a really, really weak class in that game. But they could hit up to, they would do like a plus sign shape attack. So if you attack the middle of the enemy party, it would attack the middle row and the middle column. And that would add stun damage. Stun damage was an important part of crowd control since 9x9 you're gonna want to be doing some crowd control. If you hit an enemy 3 times in a row, it would become stunned and would be unable to act the next turn. So this led to some really, really neat strategical options of, do you go for straight up power and just kill your enemies before they can even be stunned, or do you go for a stunning type build with maybe 1 or even 2 Cannoneers so that your enemies can never even attack because you're doing these huge AoEs that may take a long time to kill the enemy, but prevent them from even harming you so that you have to worry less about healing every other turn. And that, I lasted a while in that, but it got to the point of how every free-to-play game tends to get in. The economy wasn't all that great because they expected you to pay actual money to get anywhere. Like, upgrading classes required stones, and once you got to the level 100 classes, the stones you needed started to become extremely, extremely expensive and grindy to either craft, because there was a crafting system, or buy off the market. Or even just find in the world if you got extremely lucky. It was really bad. I recall the Druid, it cost like 1 billion just to get that. And at that point, that was all my money in the game, and I would have had to start grinding side instances just to get money back. Which, I mean, that would have been easy enough to do, but at the time I was on a very trash laptop, and those side instances didn't work. so I kind of had few options. And it just got worse from there. Some of the newest ones, like, I checked the game a few years back just to see how things were now, and things were at, like, the trillions now. Things were costing trillions of in-game gold just to buy them. So, yeah, the one MMO I really spent a lot of time in besides Final Fantasy XIV is one that was not too great, all things considered, just because most of the game happened after that grindy point. And it's kind of unfortunate, because it was actually really fun and really good. That was a nice long one to start. So, how did I get into Final Fantasy XIV? My brother introduced me to it, I think, in the summer before my second year of college, I think it was. Because he got into it, because he is even bigger into MMOs than I was. Or at least was, when he had time to play MMOs. Yeah, he just said, hey, you really should try this out, it's really fun. I started as a conjurer when the free trial was only up to level 20. And you only had a week of playtime. You people who have gotten into the game now with this infinite time free trial up to level 60, you got it really good. I had 20 levels to play with. The moment I hit 20, my experience got capped, and I had to go play another class at best. And I only had 1 week to play. Granted, I kind of bought the game immediately after. I hit level 20, bought the game, and then kept going, but yeah. I didn't last that long as a conjurer, all things considered. I quickly went Lancer and stayed that way for the rest of time for obvious enough reasons. Well, at least it's obvious in hindsight. Do you play any instruments? No, I suck. How did I get into raiding? That was actually my intention when I joined the game. I was going to raid as a conjurer because, well, I guess this goes further back. That I played healers in a bunch of other games. Like, the big first game that I remember that I was like, oh man, I enjoy healing, was Resistance 2 Cooperative Mode. It was kind of like raiding with hordes and hordes of enemies all coming at you, and then you had to get to a boss, kill the boss, and then move on to the next area. And there were 3 roles. Soldier, Healer, and Scout, I think it was called. I don't remember the names, but the Soldier was the defensive one, Scout was the DPS one, though Soldier was also very high DPS. And Healer was basically all there just to heal. Your weapon was kind of garbage at the best of times, but you could do damage, and you had to do damage. You had to DPS as a healer, or else you could not heal, because your healing was based on charges, and by doing damage, you would get a charge of your heal to spend. So you had to constantly be swapping back and forth from healing, attack, healing, attack, healing, attack, to keep your people alive, and to keep your number of heals available up. So that's kind of where I got into raiding, and then I came into Final Fantasy from the start expecting to raid. I can't say I was all that good, and especially the group I started in was not that good. We took like a month to get past Faust in A1S. But yeah, that's how it started. And what made me want to main Dragoon? Like I said, I just started as Conjurer intending to heal raids at the end game. And then I just swapped to Lancer, kept playing Lancer, got Dragoon, kept playing, and then by the time I knew it, I was 50, and I was just stuck with it. And I enjoyed myself with it a lot. And do I see myself changing mains in the future? I was actually considering going Samurai next raid tier, just for the better DPS, because I want, like, my group is very fine with me staying Dragoon, but this is a personal choice of, I might want to go Samurai just to better help my group if we don't get a permanent Samurai in our 4th DPS slot, because we just got back together after an extended break, and we have to do trials now, so depending on whether or not our final DPS is slotted confirmed as, like, a Samurai, I might go Samurai next year just for Prague. But, if we get in Stormblood Judge, I am going Judge. As long as it's a maiming DPS. If it's a melee DPS, which it probably will be, if we get Judge, I call dibs on Judge. I refuse to let anyone have Judge. That is my job. Nobody else's. I don't care who you are. Judge is mine. Which, speaking of, next question, do you have any predictions on future jobs? Alchemist, well, / chemist / apothecary? I don't know if there's an inclusion in 5.3 that's basically like a mini side story just to get your feels going of an apothecary showing up. And I do not know if that's there just to troll people, because these developers are known for trolling for the hell of it, or if that's actually confirming that we're going to be getting Apothecary as our next healer. Because we're definitely getting a healer next expansion. That is absolutely for sure. But, besides that, like I said, Judge. I want Judge. We are definitely going to Garlemald next expansion. There is no way around it at this point. We are going to Garlemald. So what better time for us to get a Garlemald job, which would be Judge. I don't know how they will justify it in the lore, since technically all of the what are they called in 14? Geist's inner circle of people that look like judges. They weren't called judges, but they had the armor of it, and in Garlean lore, Garleans cannot use Aether, so all of their weapons are actual just full-on weapons, where everything we do is powered by Aether. So, even Dragoon's jumps, that's Aether. Black Mage, obviously magic. Monk's speed, that's Aether. Gunblade, our charges are aetherically based. Those powder charges we get are powder Aether, not just like actual powder. That's the lore. So it's a matter of how are they... I really want Judge. I really hope they find a way to justify it, like, oh, Nero came in and made you a version of his gear, or something, because Nero is Nero and wants to study how a warrior of light would use his gear. I don't know, that's all I want. So Apothecary and Judge. Those are my predictions / desires. Are you a Dragoon IRL? No. What made you want to start making guides? Passive aggressiveness. And that's not entirely sarcastic at all, unfortunately, because I do like teaching people. I do. I like helping. But when people don't listen, it's hard. It hurts. Like, I wanted to do something to help the community in that nobody does newbie guides, really. This section of, like, guides is severely lacking. Like, I'd always see, oh, high-end raid guides, level 80 guides, min-maxing, rotations, how to play this job at 80, blah, blah, blah. But what about level 1? What about level 30? What about level 50? I use Novice Network. I insist that the system is fine when used properly. Case in point, apparently in Japan, Novice Network has no issues because they're culturally different and actually try to use the system as it's intended. So I spend lots of time in there answering questions, giving help, and a lot of the questions I kept seeing are, what rotation should I be using at this level, that level? How about this level? I just got this skill. How should I fit this into my rotation? So between that and the fact that there are tons of people who don't listen to advice when given advice because they're stubborn, or because they think you're elitist for even trying to help them improve, or you don't pay my sub, etc., etc. Between the people genuinely asking for help and the people who refuse help, but also might take the help if they just so happen to stumble across it online of, oh, what's this video that's a 1 to 80 guide? What's that about? Oh, I've been playing my job wrong this whole time. Maybe I should change how I've been doing things. They feel like they discovered me instead of being told something that they could have seen if they looked a little harder, because sometimes tooltips aren't obvious either. Like with the Bard stuff. I showed Bard tooltips are probably some of the worst in the game, just because of the level 64 tooltip. So it's like, they could have maybe seen that songs got buffed at 64, and that's why all of a sudden they felt like they were getting more procs. They could have maybe seen that if they read their tooltips closer, but also at the same time, the tooltips tend to be really bad, so I can't entirely blame them either on that side. But when they're willfully ignorant and blatantly refusing advice when given, like, look, here's this resource that has all the info you need, please take it. So it's half and half of genuine wanting to help people who are new and don't understand their job or such, and need that extra step, and people who just outright refuse, and also still need that help. They might not take the help, but here's the chance that they might at least take the reins on themselves, find my resource, and at least attempt to improve. Because I could spend like 20 minutes, literally 20, 30 minutes just talking about Mentor Roulette and all the things I have seen trying to do that roulette. The one story I always give is Shiva Extreme. I had a samurai who was freestyle. They would press buttons randomly. They would do single target attack, AoE attack, AoE attack, single target attack, single target attack. But it wouldn't be full combos. It would be attack 2, attack 3, attack 1, attack 3, attack 2 of a different combo, attack 3 of a different combo, attack 2 in the AoE combo. And no matter... I spent 30 minutes, rather than trying to teach people how to do Shiva Extreme, trying to teach this one samurai how to even do their basic rotation. Because if I couldn't get through to them how to do a basic rotation, I wouldn't be able to explain to them how to do these complex extreme level mechanics. Because about half of the party was actually doing fine, but this samurai and a few others were having issues. But the biggest weakest link I had identified just from watching was this samurai pressing buttons just completely randomly. So it's things like that that cause this series to come into play. People who genuinely are just mashing buttons and just not caring at all, even in content that explicitly requires them to at least do a basic rotation correctly. You don't have to be good, you just have to try a basic rotation in Extreme to at least not see the enrage, and also maybe be carried by the rest of the party a little bit, assuming their DPS is good. So it's like the big distinction of bad play, ignorant play, decent play, and good play. There's distinctions, and there's little things that cross lines here or there, so it's people like that that got this entire series started. And again, also, the people who genuinely do want help. So passive aggressiveness and also genuinely wanting to help. That's what got me into making these guides. Pancakes, French toast, or waffles? It is a close race between pancakes and French toast, but I think I'll give the edge out to French toast. French toast is really, really good. I love my French toast. Waffles is a very, very distant last. Even if it's chocolate chip waffles. Distant last. Like, oh, it's bad. I mean, it's not bad. I like waffles, but they're by far the worst of the three. Favorite Resident Evil game? 5. I mean, it's probably obvious, so they probably expected me to say that, given I base myself around Wesker. But I both like it because it's a bad Resident Evil game, but also a really good game with the Resident Evil charm. Because the distinction I always make with games is, just because it's in a series and it diverts, does not necessarily mean it's a bad game to start. I even made a 2-hour-long video about why Paper Mario Origami King is a bad game. Even separate from it being part of the Paper Mario series, the game is bad and fails in most aspects. Resident Evil is a similar situation. Resident Evil started as this survival horror No, I'm not cutting that out. I'm gonna let you all hear my failure to speak. But it's the survival horror genre. Maybe I'll get it right one day. And 1, 2, and 3 all stuck pretty well to that. 4 still was relatively creepy most of the time. It had that dark tone. You were always alone whenever Ashley wasn't around. And even when Ashley was around, that was its own special little bit of horror element of, oh god, I have to protect this annoying kid who can't protect herself in any way. And that was kind of scary in itself. Then you get to Resident Evil 5, and aside from the pressure of, oh god, there's tons of enemies all at once and we have to kill them all, it kind of completely dropped the scary aspects for the majority of the game. There were still some points where it got scary, but it rarely went into the scary territory. But Wesker. That's all I had to say was Wesker, but between him, the fact that the actual gameplay was good, I say the Resident Evil 5 gameplay is extremely solid. It's just not survival horror. And so, yeah, just gameplay and Wesker. And it was just immensely replayable to me just because you could always go get new weapons, find new weapons, get all the treasures in the game. That was actually the first game I ever got a platinum trophy in, was Resident Evil 5. I enjoyed it so much. So, while it's a bad Resident Evil game, and although Resident Evil 6 makes it look like a perfect game by comparison, it's still an amazing game in its own right, separate from the Resident Evil series. So even though it's probably one of the worst Resident Evil games in terms of being Resident Evil, at least in terms of tone, it still has all the same Resident Evil charm in the B-movie, Wesker being hammed up, all that, and just solid gameplay. So that's why 5 makes my #1 spot for favorite Resident Evil. Favorite Final Fantasy game, meanwhile, would be 12 or 14. It's not even close of a contest. I genuinely loved Final Fantasy 12 when it first came out. Genuinely. I played that. I was never good at it. I was terrible at it. But I loved Final Fantasy 12 when it originally came out. I never got good enough to do hunts. I didn't understand the proper gearing and giving people spreads on their proper spreads in their skill sets. Basically, everyone was both the tank, the DPS, and the healer, just because I didn't understand the game too well in terms of actual combat and how it worked. So I did just let the game play itself, like everyone complained about. Oh, Gambit system causes the game to play itself. If you're bad at it, making Gambit good enough to actually play itself and to work to a high degree and not just it works is extremely hard. So that, I never understood the depth, but I enjoyed the world, I enjoyed the locations, I enjoyed the story. I just loved all of it. Every bit of Final Fantasy XII absolutely got me. And then the Zodiac Age just makes it even better in most aspects, because graphics improved, controls and camera improved. The only thing you could really argue about it is the license boards. The power between stuff kind of fluctuates depending on if you get good pairings of jobs. Like, if you get a red mage, white mage, you kind of have no other healers for the rest of the game. You have to properly combine jobs in a way that's effective, but also not spreading yourself too thin, or also just literally spread yourself so thin you only have one good set of party members who are really good at what they do. But you could also min-max and get really, 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 really strong party makeups and have all 6 of your characters be really good. And where in the first, you could just have everyone do everything, basically. So there's the distinction there of, which one's better? The distinction, the forcing everyone to be distinct, or making you make the distinctions where everyone has everything. But yeah, it's 12 or 14 just because Shadowbringers is my favorite Final Fantasy story by far. Shadowbringers beat out every other Final Fantasy story, despite the niggling little issues, like the character of Ranjit. Like, I like his inclusion, but they didn't do enough with him. If you've not gotten Shadowbringers, watch out for Ranjit! And be very disappointed when he's not exactly used enough. Favorite video game series? That's a hard one. I'm gonna have to go with Pikmin. Pikmin is definitely my favorite series. We've been waiting like 10 years, Reggie. Was it Reggie or Miyamoto that said Pikmin 4 is almost done? Like 10 years ago, Pikmin 4 is almost done. Pikmin 3 just came out, but Pikmin 4 is almost done. Still haven't seen Pikmin 4. Where is it? Give me Pikmin 4. Come on. What was your first video game ever? I don't know. The oldest memory of video games I have is either the Aladdin on, I think, Sega Saturn, or Pokemon Blue. It's probably Pokemon Blue is the oldest one that I played, and I don't know if that's the first game I played, but I think that's the oldest one I remember playing as the earliest childhood memory of what games I played. I was also really bad at that too. I thought Blastoise was... My Blastoise was like level 80 or 90 by the time I got to the Elite Four. And so, because of that, when I would use Hydro Pump on the ghost type enemies, I thought, oh, ghosts are weak to water, because it would one-shot the ghosts, and everything else wouldn't one-shot the ghosts. Hydro Pump defeats all the ghosts, so it's super effective. No, little Wesk, that's not how things work. You're just over-leveled because you put everything into Blastoise. You're an idiot. What kind of music do you listen to, and do you have a favorite band / artist? Video games and memes? I'm kind of not wrong on that, because basically all of the music I have on my phone is video game music. So I own the soundtrack to Bastion, Transistor, Pyre. I'm going to be buying the soundtrack to Hades, Supergiant Games, or should I say, Darren Korb is absolutely amazing. I have a bunch of the Silent Comedy on there. They're a really good band, an actual band. But I learned about them because of Dark Souls. They were the ones who did the music for the Dark Souls set of advertisements. So even that technically is video game music, because it's video games that introduced me to the Silent Comedy. And then memes, Neil Cicierega is really good. And yeah, he's using actual music, but he's remixing them in clever ways. And there are a couple other songs here and there that I'll listen to that aren't memes or video game music. But in general, those are the musics I listen to. So if I had to pick a favorite band, it would either be the Silent Comedy, Darren Korb for artist, because everything he has done for Supergiant has been amazing, or the Beatles, because the Beatles. Favorite instance in 14 and why? Singularity Reactor Extreme, also known as Thornton Extreme, also known as the Minstrel's Ballad, I can't even get it right. The Minstrel's Ballad, Thornton's Reign. That instance, when it was new, was the singular hardest extreme that has ever been released. That is the hardest extreme to date. No other extremes have come close. And I mean that completely. Nothing else comes close to the level of difficulty and the level of fun that one had. It truly felt like a huge pitched battle of not just 1v8. It felt like a force of enemies versus a force of enemies. Especially the final phase, where all of the mechanics start being like Knights of the Round 4 specifically, because he'll do 5 times in the final phase. He'll do Knights of the Round 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're not numbered, but it's always in the same order. Knights of the Round 4 is like, he will mark random people to drop ice puddles. He will drop random people to drop fire puddles. He will also put fire tethers on people, so people need to spread out to break the tethers. He will also do a giant cleave AoE out into the middle of the arena, so you have to, and there's like sections between his AoE, so it's like a claw shape, and you have to dodge between the claws when he sends it out. So you have to spread out, avoid puddles, break chains, avoid his AoE, and also not look at him, because looking at him or the giant eye in the sky, which will ideally be behind him, is a gaze attack. That if you look at him or the eye in the sky for that attack, you will get turned into hysteria and walk into the wall and die instantly. So it's literally 5 mechanics all at once, and it becomes this visual mess of... you could consider it like bad design, of that you basically can't tell what's going on for half the mechanic, but it's also at the same time extremely fun because you can see just enough to do things right. You can see just enough to dodge everything as he's like, okay, I'm done with you. This fight is over. I am over it. I'm just going to kill you now. Here is everything I can throw at you at the same time. And that's kind of what all of the Knights of the Round mechanics are here's a whole bunch of mechanics at once. Deal with it. I am done with you. That's arguably the whole fight, really. That's also kind of why I like Ultimate fights, because Thornton Extreme was, he has 3 mechanics at once. He has 4 mechanics at once. He has 5 mechanics at once. Over and over through the entire fight. Because he's generally just wanting to kill you. He is done. And so, you get these neat combinations of mechanics that aren't necessarily difficult. They're not necessarily hard to pull off all at once. But the fact that he's throwing so many at you is just so fun. You have to handle so many things at once. And that's what made it so fun. It was a pitched battle, and then you finally overcame him at the end, and it was a triumph to get through it, because it was genuinely the hardest extreme fight, and it will always hold a place in my heart, and is also why I am extremely excited for Unreal. I want Thornton Unreal now. I cannot wait for that, because that fight was glorious. But that's all the questions that I was asked, and I answered pretty thoroughly, if the timer on this is any indication. Whoops. But thank you for watching, listening, whatever. If you want to input a question of your own, head over to my Patreon and give me some money. I mean, that's pretty blunt of it, but that's how it works. If you join my Patreon and you're of the $5 tier or more, you will be able to ask me questions, join the Discord, hang out, and I will do this every month from this point forward. Keep asking questions. I'm glad to get them. I'm glad to answer them. And take care. And may the power of Ann and Nidhogg lay waste to your enemies. And thank you to all of my backers. This video was explicitly to thank you guys, and I truly do thank you for your support.